First of all, we have the actual title of the manga. A lot of manga titles, they love to put in weird puns and visual gags in there, and this one is no exception. So the title in Japanese is Mitama Security. Note that all of it is written out in katakana, where that is just syllables written out, except for the re part, which is written with the kanji for ghost. So the Japanese word for ghost is yurei, and the re in there is the re in ghost. Also keep in mind that that re is a long syllable rather than short. Now let's talk about the author of the manga. His name is Hatomune Tsurun. Hatomune Tsurun. His family name, Hatomune, means pigeon chest in Japanese. Hato is pigeon, mune is chest. And also, if you know about the video game Hatoful Boyfriend, that Hato is pigeon in Japanese, which I didn't know that before I looked into this. Make sure that each syllable is getting about the same amount of stress. It's not Hatomune, it's Hatomune. Hatomune. And his given name is Tsurun. This one is a little bit difficult to pronounce. It's written just in hiragana, which is just syllables written out, and I can't imagine that's how his name is written on his birth certificate or anything like that. It's probably just a stylistic thing as an author. I tried to find if there actually was a way to write it in kanji, but I couldn't really find anything that showed it as really being a name. So I think it's probably some sort of abbreviation or something, or even just a name that he made up for himself. Now this name begins with a TS sound at the beginning of the word, unlike our American botched pronunciation of the word tsunami as like that, where we just drop the T. That T is pronounced. In English, we don't allow for clusters of T and S to appear at the beginning of a word, but many languages do, like Japanese and also German, too. The letter Z in German is pronounced ts. So if you have difficulty making the ts sound at the beginning of a syllable, ts, like that, then a good way of practicing that is to think of the English words like pots and bats. So you can say something like pots and pans, but just chop part of it off. Pots and pans, sand pans, sand pans. You really just need to get used to saying it at the beginning of a word rather than at the end. Also remember that the vowel sound represented by the letter U in Japanese is actually an open vowel, so you don't round your lips whenever you're pronouncing it. Instead of tsurun, it's tsurun. So put together, his name is Hatomune Tsurun. Next we have the titular main character of the series, Mitama Jo. Mitama Jo. So his family name is Mitama. Mitama is a word in Japanese that means spirit of the dead. It is written with the kanji for honorable and spirit. If you are familiar at all with the Persona and Shin Megami Tensei video games, there are Mitama demons that you can recruit onto your team in those games. Remember that vowels in Japanese will be pronounced exactly the same no matter where they are positioned in a word. So it's Mitama, not Mitama. Be sure to avoid the at the end. His given name is Joel, which is written with the kanji for purity or cleanse. I don't think by itself it means those things, but it's written with that kanji. The Joel is long, so make sure that it gets approximately twice as much length as the syllables whenever you're pronouncing his family name. And also be sure to not diphthongize the vowel. So keep your tongue in one position throughout the duration of pronouncing the vowel. O, not O, like we like to do in English. Overall, Mitama Jo is a very on-the-nose name for a exorcist. Next we have Haze Rena. Haze Rena. Her family name doesn't really have any specific meaning that I could find, but the kanji that it's written with mean feathers and rapids or currents. Have no idea what that means together, but that's the name. Also, reina doesn't have any sort of specific name either, but the kanji means the sound that jewels make when they clink together, and the other kanji means what? Not like me asking what it is, it's like the word what. Overall, it's a really weirdly written name. I have no idea how common it is. Pronunciation-wise, just keep in mind that all the syllables are short, there are no long syllables in it, and also remember that the a at the end of reina does not become like we have a habit of doing in English. Next we have kurosu soya. Kurosu soya. The family name kurosu isn't really a word, but the individual kanji in them mean black and necessary, or by all means. The short s at the end of the name, sometimes when people pronounce it, might get shortened into a whispered vowel, which is a concept that exists in Japanese. It's a little bit complicated, but basically, whenever certain syllables are at the end of a word, like s or ts, instead of pronouncing the full vowel, it just gets barely pronounced at all, to the point where it's almost barely perceptible. But, because Japanese is so rhythmically based, that sound still gets a beat. So you might hear kurosu or kuros, like that. The given name soya isn't really a word in Japanese either. The so kanji means to report to the emperor or to play music, and the ya kanji is to be in classical Japanese. So it seems like some really old-fashioned sort of name that doesn't really mean anything these days. And the soul is long, so it gets 2 beats. And the ya, remember that it's ya and not ya. So it's soya, soya. So altogether it's kurosu soya. And finally we have takenouchi janka. Takenouchi janka. So the family name, takenouchi, it doesn't really have any specific meaning as a word, but the individual kanji mean bamboo, of, and inside or home. I bet it's probably derived from some sort of place name or something. So when you write this name out in Roman letters, it has an OU in it. And usually when you see things written out with OU in Japanese, it corresponds to a long O sound, like O. But that's not the case here because the O and the U are 2 separate syllables. The uchi at the end, it means home, and then no is the of part. So it might be tempting to pronounce it as takenouchi, but that's not it, it's takenouchi. Also, all of those syllables are short, so make sure each of them gets about the same amount of emphasis, so it's takenouchi, not takenouchi. And then we have the given name janka, which is... honestly, I have no idea what the heck is going on with that. It's just written out in katakana, so it's just written out in syllables, janka. And I looked, and I really don't see it even being really that much of a real name. Maybe it is in Japanese? I have no idea. Couldn't find any sort of Japanese equivalent or anything. But like I said previously, the a at the end of it, make sure it stays an a and not an so make sure it's not janka, but janka. Also, for bonus pronunciation points, earlier I was talking about beats in Japanese and how things are rhythmic, and how usually syllables get beats. Well, in Japanese, the N sound after a vowel at the end of a syllable is actually considered to be a separate beat, or even a separate syllable. The n. So in janka, it's 3 beats. Ja, n, ka. In fact, even when you're writing in kana, hiragana or katakana, the n, whenever it comes after a vowel, has its own symbol. So if you really wanted to be really good at your pronunciation, you could be sure to pronounce the n sound as receiving its own beat. This is actually something I forget to do a lot of the time. So if you're going to pronounce it really well, it'd be janka. So altogether, it's takenouchi janka. So that's all she wrote for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it and found it at least slightly enlightening. I've been your host, Tucker Whatley, and you can find me on Twitter at Tucker Whatley, TuckerWhatley. No punctuation or anything like that. I also have an official website if you really want to visit it, with links to a lot of my articles, excerpts from my old radio show I used to DJ a few years ago, and other stuff that I've worked on. It's www.tuckerwhatley.com, spelled exactly the same way as my Twitter, and see you, Space Cowboy.